JB here. JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Tuesday, August 19th, 3:23. I gotta fix this typo. I hate typos. I've talked about this maybe months ago, but anybody find that when you're reading, even online, newspaper, whatever, there's more typos now than there ever used to be. It's just the craziest thing, whether it be a letter, some kind of pronunciation, just grammar, just drives me nuts. And I do a lot of typos too because I type fast. So a lot of times I'm doing multiple things, and I'm a two-finger typer, but I probably type quicker than I don't know, 100 words a minute, whatever that is. All right. Different rant, different time. But take a look at market. S&P down in the right about 0.65%. Nasdaq taking on a chin. What are we down? 1.4 now. Yeah, the Dow is kind of flat. It actually hit all-time highs earlier today, and then small caps are down about the same as the S&P. So no news or catalyst to speak of. And if you had told me that yields were lower and the dollar was stronger, I said, oh, maybe the markets are in the green today. But it seems like the semi space. So I don't know if the Intel news, right? So I mean, you have the rumblings of folks saying, no, they're nationalizing Intel. The government's getting involved, and I mean, it was okay back in when we bailed the more GM out, whatever. Bad analogy, whatever. But it's a little different. If they took over a company and controlled it, that'd be one thing. I'm not in agreement with. I'm a free market person, right? So I like things to work themselves out on their own without intervention. We'll see how that plays out. But anyway, you saw Intel again rallying, and it rallied last week. Then it was SoftBank. Um, so I mean, here it is up at 25 and change. So I don't know if that's some of the reasons you see some of the semi sector taking on a chin, and Nvidia, AMD, some of the other names in like the AI space, like the Broadcoms or what have you. Uh, Maybe a breather. I mean, these names have been on massive runs, not only from April, but then even from the start of August. So, uh, and then maybe some caution into Powell. I hate to use that word. I mean, you would think that most people, traders, are cautious anyway, right? So we'll see how things play out here. I talked about my range on the SPY was a little concerned. Well, not concerned, but let's see here. What we get up to? Yesterday was a 2.27% trading range, and today it seems like a totally different session. So I remain. I'm not bearish, right? But I'm just cautious, right? And I put that on the watch list too. I think tomorrow and Thursday probably gonna be a little more cautious days ahead of Friday, and then hopefully markets find support. I don't want to see the SPY go down to 636 here today. If we did, we still have 34 minutes left to the close. I'll probably get some more spec puts or hedge positions. But the good thing is I'm not loaded to the gills with call positions either, and I'll talk about those in a second. But that's kind of the overall market. And it's funny, I was pointing about the VIX this morning too, and even when the market was kind of showing some weakness, Nasdaq was reversing, the VIX was only up 3%, up 4%, and even now it's up 5%. And you would think it would be up, especially where we've been. So to me, it just kind of speaks a little more of profit taking than anything else. Other things of note, right? And some of the things I always tend to look at when we have some possible change in direction or momentum, the amount of stocks trading above or below their 50 and 200-day moving average. And if you take a look at both the amount of stocks on the S&P trading over their 200 and their 50-day moving average, they're both higher today. I think it's 6% or 7% of the S&P is now above the 50-day moving average. So there's just reclaimed it today, and another 3% reclaimed the 200-day moving average. So the trend is your friend. It's still, and I saw someone post, I don't know if it was an article this morning talking about the waning breath, right? That the amount of stocks above their moving average is declining, what have you, which it's not the case. And even on a red day like today, it's actually the reverse. So those are kind of like the positives. I always try and keep a glass half full kind of look on the markets, that just to kind of give a little clarity, especially when we have some weakness here. And then the VIX, it's just like a little blip here. Nothing. I mean, you wouldn't even see it, and you would think, Fridays we were down like 0.2%, and the candle's almost a little bigger than today's. So, all right, so that's kind of overall market. So individual names, and disappointing on days like today, because if we had some follow through to the upside, or at least the market's held some gains, some of these names that have been rallying would probably continue to rally. But unfortunately, the tide comes out and it pulls all the boats down, right? So MDB. Well, actually, first Align, right? So Align had that patent news after the close yesterday. I don't think that was really much of a catalyst, but needless to say, it took off. And you saw it hit highs 149 by 10:30. I used the move to close some of my calls out for over 100%, and I held the rest. And then, sure, what does it do right after I close them? Hits 149, and boom, all the way down to 143 by 215. I, this is just me, right? And I've said this morning. I said it this morning. A lot of times when I talk about a line, it always seems like there's when they have a buyback that's active, there's I wouldn't call it an odd or strange, but just there's a pattern of buying in the morning, right? So we'll see what happens tomorrow. And right now, of course, gave back the gains is slightly in the red here. I'm just going to continue to hold those calls into next week. But we'll see tomorrow if it has kind of the deja vu setup. If it does, that might be a playable pattern, right? So I wouldn't do it tomorrow, but maybe on Thursday I would look to maybe play some lottos, some weekly lottos, right? That might be the way to play it. I'm going to continue to hold those 155 strikes. The ironic or the thing that gives me a little solace holding those is that when it was hitting 146 and change, I was going to add more strikes. And I'm like, let me just wait. Then it's up at 149. I'm like, let me just lock some of the position I already have in. And then once it didn't have any follow through, I just sat on my hands and boom. So kind of sometimes I say this a lot too. A winning position is sometimes not taking a trade on, right? That's a profitable trade is not taking one on because it would have been a losing trade. So all right. So that's the line. I still think it's setting up nice. If you look at the chart, the candle doesn't even look that bad today. Of course, I'd like to see it a green candle and close above yesterday's highs, which hopefully we get that. All right, so that's a line. Then MDB, another disappointing name. I think if we were green today, the MDB would and the Nasdaq was solidly green. The MDB would be into the mid 230s. Instead, it's taken on the chin. It's pretty much flat for the week now, giving back all of yesterday's gains or most of yesterday's gains. Once it started to break, and I had it on the watch list that I was going to close my 230s. So I was able to close the last of those. And, funny enough, yesterday when I was looking at when it was over in the 231 at the 200-day moving average, the calls were like 550. I'm like, oh, maybe I should close them out here. But, I figured there was going to be a gap and go again today. And that wasn't the case. Closed the last out for over 200%. And then I still have those super speculative calls, which are probably going to expire. But at least that gave me the opportunity to close the last of the 230s, because if I didn't have those, I probably would have held on to the 230s and then I watched the position bleed for the rest of the day. But we'll see what happens tomorrow. If the market finds some footing, it's another name I'll continue to revisit, especially just this week. Next week they have earnings, so a lot more difficult to trade MDB next week. And then Lulu, right? Disappointing. Up to looked like maybe it was going to have a go at breaking out today, all the way up to 206 at the open, and then it just gave it all back. Next thing it's 200, bounce back up into the green, or up to 202, and then back to $200. Similar to MDB, didn't want to lose the profits, so those 230s I locked some in yesterday. I locked the rest in today just to make sure my position didn't go into the green. So made a couple bucks on that. I still have the 215s for this week, but I already made some nice profits on those, holding a couple freebies. I'll just continue to hold those. I mean, it doesn't make sense to take the rest off now. You never know if there's some kind of upgrade. There's still 3 days left in a week. It's another name that could really break out, but just disappointing. No follow through here today. So that's Lulu. I don't know why I don't have these others. And then on the flip side, so when I had on the watch list this morning, 636 on the SPY is kind of like my hedge position area, right? If we break that support, always be hedging, right? Especially if you have a plan, and if you don't have a plan and the market tumbles and you have call positions on or what have you, tend to get caught with your pants down. So always try to have a plan. So that 636 handle I was watching, but then Nasdaq was selling off, small caps weren't holding up, and I'm looking at the SPY. I'm like, once this 640 breaks, you just kind of sense that there's probably going to be some follow through, and not because of a bearish skew or spin or cat news or what have you. It's just a market set, just a momentum, right? It just felt like we were going to break through. So once that broke, first I looked at Well, I was looking at AMD honestly, and AMD was at. Why don't I have this up here? Here it is. AMD was like 178. Then it was one. Then it bounced. Then it was one. Let's see. Do I have it? Excuse me. 168. Then it bounced. Then down to up to 169. And then I'm like, I don't know if the risk reward is as good on that position as Broadcom. So I was looking at Broadcom. I'm like, if it drops 2.5%, 3%, the calls are going to be a couple $100. So I went with those. And then you look at the chart. I mean, 279 and change, I think, is the 50-day moving edge on Broadcom. So, I mean, do I think it gets there this week? If the market's weak, it has a possibility, or if there's continuation today and Thursday. So that was the thought process there. So it was like, it might have been, what was it, 297, 298 when I got the puts. Anyway, all the way down to 292, lock some in to cover some costs for 100%, and I'll just hold the rest as a hedge into tomorrow. If it bounces, we'll see. The last time, I think it was the end of July when I got the Broadcom puts, and those paid out whatever 1,000%, and it was a bumpy ride, right? I think it was trading right around this level. It was all the way, it was up near 300, then back into 298, back above 300, and then boom, 294, and I think the next day was down like 3 or 4%. Not saying deja vu here, but has provided great opportunity for some hedges. So I continue to look for that one. So that's already kind of covered, riding free. And most likely, if we do bounce tomorrow and Thursday, it's probably a position I'll just hold till Friday. And then Palo Alto, right? It's not a name I've traded much over the years. I'm trying to remember the last time I traded it, but I mean, the stock, I think it was the acquisition, right? Was it, did they do an acquisition? But the stock has come down to lows at the end of July and into August, and it hasn't bounced too much, right? All the way down to 167 or so. It's chopped around, and then it had earnings yesterday, and earnings were good. Guidance was great, and then the stock ran up, gapped higher, and then it was given gains back. And it's like maybe there's more issues than just the earnings, and that's kind of the thing I look at sometimes when you have these earnings on stocks, and they either give back the gains, start to sell the gap and go green to red, or they bounce, right? Some of these names that horrible earnings, outlook not too good, and all of a sudden you watch, you're like, wait, why is this thing reversing? And it goes red to green. And not only are those some of the positions that like make you wonder, hey, there's probably something more than just the earnings, or something that was in the report that is not just a top line beat or top line miss, but it's also opportunities usually for some huge multi-bag opportunities when they go especially red to green or green to red. So I mean, not enough time left in the day. 25 minutes for Palo Alto. I mean, I don't think it's going to go green to red here, but I do think there's an opportunity for possibly more downside. And if you take a look at that 175 handle, looks interesting. So can also make the case 187 and change was a 200-day moving average, so couldn't find momentum through there. Maybe it does tomorrow. But again, same like Broadcom, I'll probably hold this position into the end of the week, depending on how I can manage. If I can get some off tomorrow to cover costs, or where it opens tomorrow. Yeah, then some other names here. JOBY, I mean, was that 5 days in a row to the downside? It's like, I hate to see it go down, but it's like, I've been saying it for since before earnings. I mean, if you've been listening to the rants, doesn't mean I'm not bullish the name. I still have a couple of those October strikes. I'll continue to hold those, but here it is 1498. I thought 1495 was the key spot. I'll probably just continue to keep my eyes on it. Maybe it gets down to 12. And then maybe I'll start looking for some further out strikes, maybe all the way to January 26th. That's JOBY. Reddit disappointing here today too. I mean, there was still like a 7% implied move on the stock, and then all the way down to 226 after the open, and then it was bouncing like an $8-9 reversal, and then boom, gave it all back, hit lows at 3 o'clock. At some point, this will be a nice bounce play. So maybe Thursday into Friday, or maybe Thursday flip some cover costs, ride them into Friday. And then VKTX, right? It's probably gonna be in my do not trade list for a while. You still have analysts coming out with like $95 price targets. I think there's still concern. And I guess the more I look at the data, people concerned about adverse effects. People worried about the folks pulling out of the study. To me, like, it had to be a huge. Their data had to be like far superior with little to no adverse effects. And what's funny is the first round of the data for the venture was the adverse effects were great, and then this one's like maybe puts a little question mark. I don't know. So maybe it's an M&A target. I was talking about this morning, to see that headline that Eli Lilly's would acquire them is like it just makes, when you see financial public, Market Watch or Wall Street Journal or Bazinga, that came over the Thinkorswim platform, posting that as like newsworthy, like it deserves to be talked about. Like, that is the craziest. Like, that would never happen in a million years. Two reasons, right? They cited their a 40-year, they did a debt offering or what have you, $6 billion. And then, so they were using that as the rationale behind the possibility that they were raising cash to buy VKTX, which, number one, the FTC would destroy that in a second, right? That's number one. Number two, Eli Lilly has like $2 billion in cash and like $30 billion in debt. So if you look at the offering, and it says it right there, they're using it for general corporate purposes or whatever, which is pretty much and it says it to refinance our corporate debt, right? I mean, that's what it was for. So it just like to see that, it's like, wow. So I hopefully it didn't get people in this morning on that, but I'm trying to think of some of the other names here today. And I was saying it earlier today at about 12 o'clock, the market was starting to really find pressure, maybe around 10 o'clock to SPY, and then boom, by 12, when it was at 6:40, it was like the market's not finding a bid. And I look at my watch list and I'm like, more than 50% of the names that I have on my main watch list are green today. So, I can go down the list, and Stratasys is going today. SSYS, one of my favorite 3D plays. And it's like, there's news, a rep, Debbie Wasserman, inside bought shares, but not much, between $1,000 and $15,000. I don't think that's it. And then I look at DDD, is that one running? So who knows that? But then other name, I mean, the solar name's still going. Sherman-Williams on the heels of Home Depot. Yeah. So big news. Well, not big, but tomorrow we get Target, Baidu reports in the morning too. Lowe's. So Baidu's on similar to VKTX. That's on my do not trade list. So I'm going to stay away from that one. It's funny. Target this morning did the same thing it did yesterday, all the way up to highs. I think it hit 107, then all the way to lows by the afternoon. The difference between today and yesterday on Target is the premiums on both sides are up. So you take a look, it's barely up today, and the 120s are now up 32%, the 120 weekly strikes. So yesterday when I was looking, the stock was in the green and the calls were red. So finally the premiums are creeping in. I mean, there's 20 minutes to the close, so you have to get in and out. You have to get them out before the end of the day, unless you want to hold into the binary event tomorrow. But me, if I was leaning on one side, I think it's going to trade 115, 118 tomorrow. Just my guess, because I think there's so much negativity wrapped around the tariffs, and especially with Walmart and Target, that I think it's like a anchor wrapped around their stock, right? And maybe tomorrow's earnings will kind of alleviate some of that. And I'm not trying to say that there's going to be no comments around tariffs. There's got to be some impacts, right? I mean, it's just, there has to be. To not say there won't be, or to dismiss it is like almost ignorant, right? But hopefully they can like mitigate it and say, okay, this is how we're managing it, right? And manageable. And I think, anyway, all right. Have a great day, folks. I'll be back. Rock and roll.